Welcome to American Aupair Host Mom. Today we're going to talk about the thing that is super difficult even for really great experienced host families, and that's giving feedback to your au pair. Why is it hard even for experienced great host families? So great families get the most difficult thing right, and that is interviewing. They interview, they don't lower their standards, they get the right au pair for their family. They set great expectations. They have a handbook, they onboard awesomely. But then their au pair becomes family, which is your goal. You ease in, you get comfortable, and you ease into being family members. So when something starts to bother you, or when there's a problem, you don't want to give feedback to a family member. How is that going to go? So today I'm going to give you tips on two things. One, when you should give feedback, and two, how do you give that difficult feedback? And stick around for the end for some tips when you're starting off with your au pair that might make this process even easier. So to begin with, when do you give feedback? There are three things you need to keep in mind here. Number one, empathize with your au pair. You're the experienced host family that's a resident in your country. Your au pair is young and not comfortable. They came from a different culture. They're all the way across the ocean in a strange place and they know no one. So think about that. Also be familiar with the fears that most au pairs have. They're not comfortable asking a lot of questions. They're not comfortable asking how they should discipline your kids, asking for their pay, asking when their vacation is, asking what the rules are. So help them. Keep asking them questions. Keep letting them know what the expectations are. Next, choose your battles. And what I mean here is you don't want to nitpick everything. This is a big mistake. You come off as a nag, you come off as cruel, you come off as cold and someone who is not part of the family. So instead, before problems even arise, I want you to go ahead and think about what are the top maybe three things that really are important to you. So in this case, for me, what's really important is building a strong role model for my kids who's a good person, and I want them to feel the same about themselves. So if issues in the way my au pair interacts with my kids and it hurts their confidence, it hurts their learning, we're going to have conversation. But if my au pair maybe doesn't clean my dishes quite right, or there's a milk left in the sink or something curdled, I can let that go because cleaning is not my top priority. It's my kids' confidence. This will vary for every family. You just need to know you and know what you hold most dear and what bothers you most and set to that, not everything. Next, when you do know something, face it immediately. Face conflict as soon as possible. Most people they're scared. They know that this is going to be awkward. So instead, when they see a problem, they say, maybe it will get better. Maybe if I'm nicer, or maybe if we kind of just ignore it, it will go away. And in 99% of the cases, it doesn't. And in fact, it only gets worse. And therefore, you get more and more annoyed. And by the time you bring this up, you're going to explode. You're going to then come off as emotional, irrational, and mean. You don't want that, and it's not helpful. So now that you know when you should give feedback, how do you handle that difficult feedback? First thing you want to do is set a neutral time in place. So what I mean by this is that you want no distraction. For me, I always make sure that my kids are in bed because I don't want them involved in this conversation. I don't want them interrupting it. Next, you need to consider your au pair's schedule. You don't want to surprise her if she has plans and you are focused on solving this problem. It also will not go well. So you may want to go ahead and give her a heads up through a text or a verbal warning, but don't alarm her too much. So what I mean by this is if you are giving a heads up on the conversation, send a text or mention it, but let them know, hey, things are going pretty well. I just have this one topic that I want to talk to you about on how we can improve and learn together on it. And therefore, they won't be thinking, oh my God, she hates me. She's going to kick me out. She's doing something terrible. Instead, it's like, yeah, there's probably something I can improve on and I can start thinking about it. Next, in regards to the location and how you do it, make sure you're sitting down eye to eye. What I mean by this is you don't want one of you standing, one of you sitting, being uncomfortable. Start off on a good neutral ground. Next, try to make this conversation as positive as possible. I know this is difficult, but if you look at it as a improvement and focus on learning kind of context instead of you did this wrong and I'm really upset, it can come off better as in, hey, I really care about you. I really care about my kids. I know this is a difficult thing. I know you're learning and I understand that. And I want to talk about how I can help you learn. Next, you want to give a very focused example. So don't be generic like, I wish you would just help my kids communicate better. No, instead you need to say, hey, I saw that the way you discipline my kids, you don't explain to them what they did wrong. And in the future, just to help them grow, I need you to be very focused on how you communicate with my kids and therefore give them examples. You did this, so you need to do that. Whatever the feedback is, use an example. Let them know what you've seen. Let them know why they did has a negative impact. And then next, give them multiple recommendations on how to improve. If you're giving them options, then you're not locking them into one solution. And also ask for their feedback on what they think about those solutions. What do you think about what I've suggested? Is there a way we could even do this better? I'd like to learn from you and grow with you and figure out how this important area can be improved in the future. And then once you've done that, make sure your au pair knows that you're a team player, that you're there to help them. Say, hey, now that we've discussed this, I feel a lot better, but I want you to know that you can always ask for help. And then end on a positive note. Again, they are a family member. There's not your employee or just your employee. Let them know that you care a lot about them. Perhaps, depending on your relationship, ending with a hug or some kind of positive affirmation is a great way to end this. Lastly, I want to get into tips on how to start the relationship right with your au pair so that feedback won't be as awkward. Heads up, most family members or most host families struggle with this. I intended to do this. I did not do this with my current rock star au pair, but the one time I did have to give feedback, I was wishing I had done this. So right from the start, go ahead and set up a weekly meeting time. A time, again, that works for both of you, and you can let your au pair know this is both of your time. So a time to bring up concerns on both sides, concerns about the children, how the au pair can do better, how you as a host family can do better. And you can bring up some topics that are pretty mundane and typical, but important. So checks in on your au pair's education status. Have they identified what they're doing? Are they progressing on that? Check in on their thoughts on their vacation time, or check in on schedule. Maybe the holidays are coming up and the schedule's going to change. Just all those things that are mechanics that you would probably talk about anyway, but this is a very focused, good way to do it. And it then nicely brings up the ways you can improve. So you can also bring up ways to, at the end, say, how can I be better and how can you be better? And it feels much more natural than that, hey, we've been going for 6 months and all of a sudden I have a thing that I need you to improve on. Lastly, you also, if you don't like those weekly meetings or you're starting to feel like your au pair is much more settled into the family, you can go ahead and change weekly to monthly or to quarterly, or you can consider doing a daily transition meeting that might be much shorter, like 2 to 3 minutes. So with that, hopefully this has given you some great ideas on how to give feedback. If you have even more problems and it's just not working out, you might want to check out this rematch video or check out other videos that are useful for host families.